Hello, Zalto Live listeners. Before we get started, we wanted to let you know that more teachings from Zen monk Claude AnShin Thomas are available in his two books, At Hell's Gate, A Soldier's Journey from War to Peace, and Bringing Meditation to Life, 108 Teachings on the Path of Zen Practice. Both are available wherever books are sold, and all proceeds go to the Zalto Foundation, dedicated to promoting nonviolence, awareness, and positive change.
Hello and welcome to Zalto Live, the podcast featuring Zen Buddhist monk Claude AnShin Thomas, who will share with you his life experiences that includes not only military combat, personal violence, and addiction, but also healing, transformation, and the ongoing joy of everyday life. Please enjoy listening.
If you write to me, shorter the email, quicker the response. Doesn't matter what language you write to me in. I can always translate it. Not that I speak fluently that many languages, but Google does. So I just use that. I have one question that was mailed in, but I will start with a question from the group. Miyoko.
How do you do with defiance today?
Now, you mean someone else's defiance or my own?
Either.
Defiance is not such a topic for me today. Defiance in the past has been generated out of fear. And with other people's defiance, I have just surrendered to let them suffer because they will. I'm sorry it has to be like that, but it is like that. Even though they may not think so. What is it? If I have to attempt to convince someone of this teaching, then they are not ready to listen and I'm not ready to teach. Question from the group. First Myoshin and then Myozen.
When experiencing physical or emotional pain, should I relate to that as an opportunity? And if so, what kind?
It is an opportunity. What kind is revealed through the process of just being present with it, like right now. Yes, I'm very present with physical pain. And it gives me an opportunity to watch my mind, watch the various scenarios my mind can produce, watch the feelings attached with that, not reject them nor allow them to define me. And just continue to do the next thing that's in front of me to do. Just engage myself in the process. The same would be true, the same has become true for me for emotional pain. To be really present with it. And what I understand is if I'm just really present with it, not think that I am. Watch how it wants to, how it either wants to control me, decide for me, dictate to me, or how I want to reject it. So if I can become the observer of those processes, the benefit of them, the benefit of these experiences, if there is any, reveals itself over time. Not my time, but over time. And it may happen 6 months, a year later. I might go, something might register. Myozen.
Is it your impression that aggression and violence in the society is increasing and wars on the planet are increasing? Or do you rather think that we have more access through social media?
Yeah, not only social media. We just have more access to information, like instantly. Could be newspapers, could be television, could be radio, could be social media, the internet. We just have more access. I don't think that there's more. There just is violence. More. There's a lot we have access to that in the past we might not have had access to, but it didn't mean it wasn't happening. What I would rather do than focus on what's going on externally is to look at the roots of war, violence, and suffering in me and work to learn to live at peace with them and peacefulness, to stop being a source of conflict, war, violence. Question that was mailed in. Do I have any suggestions on how to maintain the mindfulness without constantly drifting away? Forget about any idea you ever had about mindfulness. Mindfulness isn't a thing. It's a byproduct of an active meditation practice. And at the moment that I've realized I've drifted away, I am in fact at my most present moment. So when I'm aware that I've drifted away, because I am of the nature to do that, I just bring myself back again and again and again to my breath. Question from the group. Sabina and then Gabi.
Wenn du körperliche Schmerzen hast, ab welchem Zeitpunkt entscheidest du dann, statt präsent zu sein, zum Arzt zu gehen,
When you have
dir helfen zu lassen.
when you have physical pain, what is the moment for you when you, instead of just being present with it, decide to see a doctor or get some help?
Well, being present with it takes me to see a doctor. It takes me to get some help. If I'm not present with it, then I might either ignore it or I might overreact to it.
Yeah.
So that means I may go to a doctor or something for a circumstance that's just not necessary. Overreact. Rejecting, not paying attention, is to not go at all. Or rather wait until it's quite late in the process. This is why a practice is so important, because I learn how I'm conditioned to do either, to reject or be controlled by. That I begin to learn more and more. I learn more and more how to listen. Gabi.
Unterscheidet sich ein Vorstandsretreat von einem normalen Retreat und wenn, auf welche Art und Weise?
In what way does a board retreat differ from a more like regular kind of retreat, and if it does, in what way?
Well, not really. It's just that I have all the board members are here, and it's not often the case. And then we do have an in-person board meeting, and then when we do deep listening and mindful speech, I make an effort to direct the topics to board-related matters. And with a board retreat, in some ways, is much more intimate because there's not as many. Yeah, the board isn't 20 or 30 people, and most of the board members have been studying or practicing with me for some time. The kitchen crew is smaller. Yes, instead of 3 people, we have 1, and I actually get involved in a bit of the cooking, like that. Question from the group. Yes, Myo Zen.
Do you see a difference between inner hindrances or outer hindrances on the spiritual path, or are there simply hindrances?
There is no spiritual path. That gives the indication that there's a spiritual path and a path that's not spiritual. The reality of existence is spiritual. If the thing isn't practical, it's spiritual. And the hindrances are all of our ideas about this reality. Oh, I'm so spiritual. No. To recognize the spiritual qualities in existence, in all things. Question from the group. Sabina.
Aber wenn es keinen spirituellen Pfad gibt, dann hättest du ja beim Alkoholismus und den Drogen bleiben können.
But if there is no spiritual path, you could have just stayed with alcoholism and drug addiction.
Yes, I could have. Yes. And within that, there is also a spiritual reality. It's not what I would recommend. But what is the spiritual reality in dependence? It shows the spiritual reality is how removed I am from the interconnected reality of which I am a part of. And just because someone is not using intoxicants doesn't mean that they have any sort of conscious awareness of the spiritual reality that is existence. And so the spiritual qualities of unawareness are just that. Question from the group. Oh, Robert.
Do you feel that a lay practitioner can enhance their practice, not their path, because there is no path, by retreat, regular retreats?
That's an interesting question for me. I mean, I appreciate coming together with the group, but if we feel that we need that to get back to our spiritual practice, then the real challenge is what's happening to our commitment. What have we not recognized to understand that daily life and practice aren't two things? Daily life is a retreat. Now, it is good to come together to practice together. I value that. It's interesting to see the interactions that unfold in the course of a disciplined practice session. But that's how I look at retreats. Retreats are practice periods. They enable us to see where we have lost, where we have drifted away from the discipline, the discipline the discipline that's important to maintain in daily life. Yes, and the retreat is a specific event. The challenge is, how do we take the disciplines that we engage and practice with in retreat and bring them into daily life? How do they adapt? Because if we don't bring those practices into daily life, not in a rigid or dogmatic way, then retreats aren't, those dedicated practice periods are not serving their purpose. Question from the group. Yes, Gabi.
Kann Verdrängung manchmal nützlich und hilfreich sein, oder ist es halt einfach immer nur Verdrängung und ich schaue mir was nicht an?
Yeah, so avoidance or denial, can that sometimes be helpful or useful, or was sagt es im zweiten Teil, oder ist es
halt einfach Verdrängung und ich schaue mir halt einfach was nicht an?
Or is it just avoidance or denial and I just don't look at it?
You know, I will say that it's never useful. Not really. However, it may be protective. It may have served us for a period of time. But long term, it never really serves us. It only guarantees that suffering will continue to be transmitted. And I won't recognize it. I won't understand it. It will always be the responsibility. My suffering will always be the responsibility of others, even though others can activate that suffering. For my suffering, I'm responsible. Question from the group. Yes, Robert.
Do you believe that denial or avoidance can sometimes protect people from emotions that they are unable to handle at that time?
That's a tricky one. From where I sit, from the way from the fabric of my existence, my experience, my study, everything. There is no emotional state that we can't handle. None. It is our defiance, our resistance, or our ideas that we can't handle with things. Avoidance. People have said to me, what if somebody were to come to a retreat and they were to have some emotional breakdown? And my response is that a breakdown or a breakthrough? And I've also said then we would get them the support that they needed. So if they couldn't regain stability, emotional, psychological stability, then we would get them the support that they needed, because all the answers are not in a disciplined meditation practice. I mean, it's not true, they are. But how to work with some of these complex mental states. Support this practice is more than just here in the Zendo. Question from the group. Yes, Myo Shin.
How do you understand courage today?
Yeah, you know, I don't really think about that much, because courage, like love, and they're so often misappropriated or misunderstood. I'd rather just not think about those things, but just to be present. In my desire to be present, I begin to discover what prevents me from being present. So, I mean, one could say courage is the willingness to allow myself to fall right through myself, to step into the unknown. Humanity struggles so much with the reality of not knowing. I could say that. I don't know if I'm just cautious about these terms. Question from the group. Yes, Nicola and then Kelby.
The difference between being clear and being dominant.
I don't think we can establish a line. I think it's revealed case by case, experience by experience. Often, I think people mistake. Let's say if a person is in denial, or if a person is in defiance, they are more likely to experience clarity as something different. If people are fixed on certain ideas of things, then anything that challenges that worldview is likely to be greeted in some way, like that dominance or something. I think it really depends. It's circumstance to circumstance. Yes, I think I had to be willing to allow myself to be exposed to different ideas and different different perceptions of me. I mean, I was never a kind of person to be dominated. It's not my character. Whether it would be emotionally, psychologically, or physically. Although it has happened more physically than, well, physically and emotionally it has happened. But out of those experiences, I have learned something about myself. I have learned ways in which I had been conditioned to view the world. And as a result have become more aware of my own vulnerabilities or my own conditioning to see or believe the world in a certain way. I've become less locked into fixed ideas. Now I'm quite clear I'm quite confident in my perceptions of the world, and I'm not hesitant to offer them. Always when offering, always when speaking my clarity, I am always aware that I could be mistaken. I'm always aware of that. For me, that's the art of being vulnerable and time. So I'm not hesitant to speak my mind, because it comes out of an extensive life experience and a disciplined practice, not just dogmatic. And I'm aware that about anything I could be mistaken. There's one issue of which I am absolutely unwaveringly certain, that my nose is on my faith. Question from the group. Yes. Oh yeah, that's right, Kelby. Sorry.
Yeah.
AnShin, how do you go about establishing priorities when you have multiple responsibilities or tasks?
I don't think about them. Yes. You know, it's like there's a list of priorities, and those priorities determine their position. So so I have a list of priorities. I start with that which is at the top, with an idea to work my way through, and something else happens that needs to be addressed. So I address that without losing sight of the list. I know I'll take care of what needs to be taken care of. Question from the group. See, this is just a second, Gabi.
Gabi, nochmal kurz.
This is really all about practice. A sustained, disciplined, committed practice. A sustained, disciplined, committed practice reveals to me the traps and snares of my conditioning. I just have to be willing to listen. Someone asked about a question about spirituality and addiction. The spiritual quality of addiction is the gift of showing me how I don't want to be, what is neither helpful nor supportive. It helps me to understand that there are no shortcuts to the process of awakening. Question from the group. Oh, Gabby. Yeah, and then Robert.
So this list we just referred to, list of priority, is something that often stresses me. So how could I do that in a better way?
Well, it only stresses me if I'm fixed that it has to be done exactly in that way. It'll get done. If I just keep it in mind, take care of what's in front of me to take care of. Robert, this is the last question.
Do you feel that people with a propensity for addiction should also maintain a 12-step participation?
I don't know all that much about 12-step practices, but I do know that there isn't one solution. From what I understand, 12-step practices can be really supportive and helpful to people. But I don't know, I've talked to people in these circles, and I've heard something about 36, not 12. 36 spiritual principles, not 12. But really, there isn't one way, as I've seen. I do know that people who have a propensity to addiction, once they stop the immediate focus of their addiction, there are then following mental and spiritual aspects of that addiction that need to be addressed. Twists and turns of awakening. People want to practice with me, no intoxicant, no alcohol, no illegal drugs. If they are taking prescription medication, I want to know what they are. And I want to know some history around that, because I may have them visit in conjunction with a medical professional to not take those medications and see how their life unfolds over a period of time. If they're unable to establish some equanimity in their life without a particular prescription medication, they can always go back, they can always start taking it.
Thank you for listening to this episode on Zalto Live. If you would like additional information, please look at the show notes or visit zalto.org. That's zaltho.org. Our work is made possible solely through donations, so please consider making a tax-deductible gift on our website. We wish you well and thank you.